Hi everybody. It's been a long time since I got on and posted anything on YouTube. I've had a lot of processes lately where I've been working through my relationship with food, what food means to me, how I associate with it and stuff, because I've dealt with different weight issues or body issues my whole entire life. So I began writing a process down onto a notepad the other day when it felt like I had an amazing breakthrough into some insight, but I didn't know what that insight was. So I wrote down everything I could possibly think of, and it felt very insightful to me, enough that I would really like to share it. So I want to thank you right at the first for being willing to listen while I read it, because I would love to just be able to speak it and say it and have it all come out real fluently. But it was written in such a way I really need to read it. So thank you for being patient and listening while I read it. Okay, so my question that I asked myself is, if food were a personal relationship, or if food was personified, how I see food, what would my thoughts be on that? So I just was very honest. The type of relationship I had with it was thoughtless, disrespectful, mindless, obligated, guilty, rushed, obsessive, needy, hoarder, gluttonous, no self-control, and pointless. I choose the quickest, easiest, fastest food with no thought of what it's cooked in or cooked with. This isn't always, but this is me being honest with myself about how often I do this. Rarely do I take the time to get to know my food before I interact with it. I rush in, I don't pay attention to it or give it any consideration. I usually start stuffing it into my mouth. I never really say thank you to the food for all it has done or does do. I will overeat in huge amounts, and I blame it for the way I look. I get angry with it for not performing perfect results after I abuse it. I treat it with very little respect until I can't handle my own discomfort anymore. Then I turn on it with a vengeance and demand it perform a miracle for me, and insist that it correct my horrid thoughts and shameful feelings with 1 or 2 green drinks or a somewhat thought-out meal. I mostly purchase food out of obligation, and then complain that it's not enough to make me happy. I choose the processed, dead, altered products a lot of the time, and insult my partner, my body, by calling that fraudulent substance food. Then take my anger out on the real stuff, because it can't repair the damage the processed choices had created for me quick enough. I threaten food and promise to withhold it from its sole purpose for long periods of time. Then when I feel I can't stand it no longer, I ingest so much of everything and disgrace myself for not having more willpower. So this was just me writing down. I wanted an idea of if food was a relationship, if it was a person, somebody was actually in a relationship with, because that's the energy you have with food. That would be a very abusive relationship right there. Never even considering it before I took time to prepare it, or I don't know, everything that I'd written down. But it brought me to this next point that I wanted to really share. And that was, the thought came into my mind, what would it sound like if I allowed my body to tell its story instead of my mind and all the stories being told by my mind or whatever it is that I choose to tell from my perception? What if I allowed my body to just tell the story? And I'll tell you, my hand started writing pretty darn fast when I gave permission to my body to express its story. So it's not real long, but it does start at the beginning and ends at 17 years of age, because that's the age that this body was when I left home and went out to start my married life, and a different kind of life, being married, then divorced, then right where I'm at today. So, but I don't go the whole distance, excuse me. I don't go the whole distance. The body only tells the story up until 17. So I'm going to read from there. So my body's name is Jeanette, and here's her story. I was born November of 1969. My first experience of this physical plane was cold, sterile, and frightening. I was, previously, for 9 months, gently fed with all my food processed so I could effortlessly assimilate it. I never went hungry, and my systems all worked with ease. After exiting the womb, everything changed. My natural instincts were instantly challenged. My need to be warm, nurtured, and held to my mother's breast for nourishment was not there. I was given a substitute plastic, foul-tasting bottle, sometimes propped up with inanimate objects, so the bottle and its contents would just fill my tummy, and the touching and nurturing was scarce. I quickly learned to adapt. The condition changed as fast as I did. By my 6 months of being here, nighttime care was up to me. I needed survival skills to kick in at 6 months. To find the hidden plastic water bottle in the corner of my crib to calm my hunger pains in the nighttime, because the mother body couldn't be bothered with my little baby body at night. The conditioning of my nourishment and what I was willing to do to get it began to be established at this tender age. By the time I was in a high chair, I could feel the knot in my tummy, that to feed me made the mother body frustrated and agitated. I didn't seem to be a priority. Most of the time my tummy pains were too big by the time the food was given, so I began to associate no food as better than food. Food on a tummy in pain creates more discomfort, and I felt very ignored. This made my eyes cry and my tummy hurt more. Eventually, I was old enough to talk and ask for food a little more efficiently. Feeding this baby body was a difficult thing, it seemed, as though more than enough was provided. And when I had had sufficient to fill me, I was guilted and shamed to fill it beyond capacity. I began very early to now associate food, the need and desire for it, as shame and guilt. Because I should eat more than I needed or desired, because somewhere in the big world beyond my sight, there were bodies starving for food, and I seemed to have plenty, but wasn't grateful for it. So I began to perceive and take responsibility for all and anyone who may or ever will be hungry. I also began to overindulge with this food to cover up my endless shame. This food was here on my table, provided by my father body, who could barely make enough to make ends meet, and I should always eat everything on my plate, while I was simultaneously shamed for thinking I was even worthy of a scrap of food to be laid on my plate. After all, what contribution had I ever made to this family of bodies anyway? I was just one more mouth to feed. The confusion inside my little body was a looming tidal wave, and it would suck me under its power frequently. My little under-nurtured and undernourished and unloved body was now a target for sexual misconduct. Now, being young and small, my neural networks was not fully developed, so I couldn't accurately interpret the physical sensations my body at 3 was interpreting. The physical signals all by sense and emotion. Well, hell, now that just made everything that much more special and challenging to discover. You see, my body is a fine-tuned instrument that can sense the slightest breeze as easy as the slightest annoyance another body is giving. So without my little body's consent or willing participation, sexual sensations were thrust upon it, and the big body, performing all the actions, emanated with great force, pleasure, guilt, shame, blame, anger, and frustration, while simultaneously using physical touch on the skin's sensitive body parts that sent sensations of chills, butterflies, slight nervousness, big physical sensations of pleasure to an extent, and some forms of physical discomfort. The tiny body was flooded with a tornado of so many conflicting feelings and sensations, and no logical way to separate them. So it did the best it could, and it categorized them efficiently under what feels exciting to the body, what feels at all pleasure, is shame, guilt, anger, frustration, and sadness. And while you don't want to feel that, you like to feel the pleasure the touch gives you. You're wired to enjoy touch. So I now have interpreted, if you want or desire it, no matter what it is, feel very ashamed and guilty for this, and get frustrated and angry. The body, now reaching a tender age of 5, 6, and 7, has so many other amazing sensations shockingly thrust upon it, in the same intensity and confusing manner as the previous. So my body is now building a template of information through sensory perception and storing it deep within the cavity of the whole body. These next sensations were mostly associated around the need to nourish the body in some way, be it food, sleep, protection, or love. The sensations now were deeply violent and terrifyingly painful. My body began to perform with such great precision the actions to every sensation of pain, embarrassment, humiliation, torment, shearing physical pain, and torture. Anger and frustration were the first usually to appear, because I had learned through experience that they could cover shame and guilt better than a deep blanket of snow covers the grass. Now my body has hit 10, 11, 12, and 13 years of age. Now my body has hit 10, 11, and 12 years, experience, and the violent torrent of messages being hurled its direction are exhausting and numbing. Food has taken a now sour turn. It no longer is something I can have 2 or 3 times a day. Now, because of my inability to conform to the ideas of the parent body, all food, comfort, sleep will be denied for long, indefinite periods, with no real way to emerge from this puzzle with no end. It would take something outside of smarts to outwit this trauma. The physical pain inflicted on the body daily had become commonplace. The parent body had decided that truly severe consequences were in order to force these little bodies to comply with the work that had no end, or the story with no beginning. How to find the answers to stop the starving body pains and end the microscopic humiliation, and to unlock our bodies from this tiny room and let us out to be in a larger environment of trauma and pain. But in the larger environment, we had at least, or so it seemed, less spotlight on our every flaw. This painful physical, emotional, spiritual, mental torture was shamefully dissolved into the greater mass of family bodies after a long year and a few plus months. Now, to appease the parent bodies and relieve the conscience that they had any accountability for these emaciated child bodies, the next level was to remove your public ability to hide or blend into the family. Humiliation to the nth degree was called upon, to be administered to my youthful body of 13. Let's, the parent body would say, pretend she is a shameful, pitiful, pathetic 2-year-old, and we will treat her as such. But a little deeper wound would be to force her sibling bodies into this shameful torture as well. Let's make them unwilling participants in shaming this child body. Now, simultaneously, at the same time, my 13-year-old body was also being startled awake with the whisperings in my ear of quiet words that were supposed to sound like words of comfort by another sibling body, touching body parts with a sensual adult touch and sending my body into a raging flood of confusion. Shameful desire to be nurtured and loved in any way possible, while also deep shame for wanting it at all, was happening. It's deeply confusing to navigate through this pile of sensations of extremes. Nurturing and the sensation of love were as void as the blackest of blacks that light cannot penetrate. I learned through experience to this point that love and nurture feel like need and shame. So I found that I could effortlessly interchange these sensations, and found that the line began to be so blurred that it began to mesh into one black line that eventually became one dark void, full of fear, scarcity, panic, excitement, torture, pain, humiliation to the point of painful ecstasy. All of my body was deeply engaged in an experience of chaos and confusion, masked to the eye of the body as normal, or at least kind of. Now the changes in the body were being refined like a sharpened pencil, to draw the smallest lines in the tiniest places possible. Every breath, every slight sense or movement by any body in the family body, for now at least, was carefully and painstakingly charted into 3 different categories: unsafe, terrifying, or worse yet, almost undetectable emotion of cold numbness, an inability to categorize at all. My body began its 13th, 14th, and 15th year here. Deep personal confusion and chaos are looming from deep inside as evidence of being female began to take shape for the body and the observer. This female frame, now each breast pressing a soft mold into the clothing on the outer garment, had a sensation of being more of a neon flashing arrow to direct more precise abuse than to express any form of beauty. All these new changes produces the same old emotion: shame of exposure, guilt for being the wrong size, blame for needing more external nurturing products to care for your now disgusting body and all its fluids that came monthly, like it or not. The mother body again assists perfectly in shaming my smaller body for not intuitively knowing that these new functions were supposed to happen, and that I was to act as though nothing strange and bewildering was happening to me at all. My new brain is now a more complete picture as well. The neurons are well formed, and I know that my focus is not so intensely located in my body as before. Now I can really think and focus for what seems to be separate from all others. I have opinions. I begin to express with a more dramatic flair my thoughts and emotions about my environment. This new experience brings quite the inner conflict. The physical pain by the other parent body is in increase, and when my body's faith shows the slightest resistance to the experience, I am pounded with a debilitating shame and guilt and physical pain to an unprecedented level. Part of my body feels empowered at this new ability to endure greater amounts of pain, physical and emotional, and I start a new file in my brain called How much can I handle before I show pain on my face? Now my body has a new goal. Anything to spice up the old life. We, my body and my thoughts, now knows we really need to get on the same page. So we establish an innumerable list of thought stories for the new thinking brain to chew on that so perfectly match the sensations in the body. In fact, they're such a great match that every time my brain thinks, "What a waste of flesh you are," my body says, "Yep, that's it." And a matching chemical is released just like any addictive chemical drug, and the body and my mind are satisfied that we, no matter how ugly or unpleasant, have arrived at the truth. The mind and body continue in this ferociously vicious environment, devoid of real love and nurturing. Now it seems a little more comfortable at the chaos and confusion because, you see, we have been able to call it something, and that name matches the feelings, so we must be right. And you know, deep into every tissue and cell of the body, from the earliest memory, the thought has been instilled: choose the right, do what's right, make right choices. Now, in a pattern more intricate than a nebula, the mind in the brain and the mind of the body begin to make a story to live by and stop trying to survive. It's so pathetic to survive when your body is now 16 and 17 years old. You have to have your shit together now, so you just do it. You gather up all your most reliable data that you can from your past 17 years and you make a list. Life is hard, but to suffer is a great reward in the afterlife. Never tell a lie, except for the ones your parent bodies say are necessary for building the kingdom of God. You know, some big white pure body up in the sky somewhere, whatever that means. Pretend to feel and act different than what you really feel, because no one wants to hear the real way you feel. It's nonsense. Don't show your authentic affection towards others, especially men, because then you are fully responsible for all their inappropriate actions and deeds. Forever. So fake it until you can't tell when it's real. Be numb to the insults of others. After all, they're your family and they're only kidding. Develop a thick skin, but for crying out loud, show some sensitivity. Stop looking so stupid and wipe that smirk from your face, because who do you think you are anyway to have an opinion or feelings about what we, your parent bodies, do, or, better yet, do for you? Keep a large arsenal of masks at your disposal and use them accordingly and efficiently. Never use the masks of truly devoted child when your parent body is wearing their "feel sorry for me" mask. It's a disaster. And remember, just be your real self. Unless anyone sees and feels uncomfortable, then for Pete's sakes, wear the damn mask, you idiot. Oh, and by the way, no one likes a fake person, always pretending to be someone else. Yes, and be courageous as you live your real, full, happy life now. But for hell's sake, keep your vulnerability where it belongs. No one wants to see that. Give gifts to others so that they can feel obligated to love you. After all, you need friends. Be a true friend and conceal yourself from everyone, and practice the masks. You'll become an expert in time, you'll see. Pretend that nothing could ever hurt, embarrass, or shame you, no matter what comes your way. But as soon as the illusion begins to fall from your inner world and you sense your guilt, quickly and with true skill, hurl shameful comments to the other body to distract them while you put your curtain of illusion back in place. Oh, and one more thing. Don't worry about ever saying "I love you." It just makes things complicated. And anyway, you should just know it without being told. Okay, let's get started on our real life now. You're 17. Be a good parent when you have kids now that you're entering your new life as an adult. Teach them exactly what your parent bodies taught you, but put a twist on their sick way of raising your body so that you can at least feel somewhat justified in not making the exact same mistakes as them. That would be a shame. Or normal. I'm still figuring that one out. Anyway, I wanted to put this down and post it up on YouTube with my express heart's content that I don't think I'm the only one that feels this way or had felt this way in my life. This is my body being able to finally express where it's been, what the journey it's been on, and help me to have a better, greater understanding of what relationship really means. Relationship with myself, relationship with food, relationship with others, relationship with friends. It's not just about losing weight or gaining weight or whatever it is that you feel your particular issue is. It's about the energy of relationships. And that relationship starts with you and yourself. What relationship you have, what does it look like? And I wanted to find out what relationship I had established in an unconscious way in regards to food. And I pretty much made my food look like my childhood existence when I was growing up as a child. Very shameful, I annoyed it, annoyed it, ignored it, pretended it wasn't there, pretended it wasn't having an effect. And that's exactly the way I grew up. And I realized just recently, walking through this process, that I've also would choose the dead, altered, processed food because it couldn't interact with me. I was safe. In a very twisted, backwards way, I felt safer eating dead food than I felt eating live food. That's changing and has been changing for a while, but that's not the story I wanted to talk about today. It was about where it's been, where I've been, and this struggle that I've had my entire life to associate where I am sitting versus all the shame that's been in my body. So my thought really is this. It has been hugely beneficial to me as I've walked this process to personify as many emotions and things as I can so that I can see them in a way where I don't see them as me, but actually as an energy in motion. And the being inside this body, is having the experience of these energies. And I can choose which ones that I would like more experience with and the ones that I'm complete with. So I don't have a whole lot more to say. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'd love comments. I'd love feedback. I'd like to know what you feel, how this have affected you, and if you can relate on any level. So anyway, thank you all for listening.